Have you ever found yourself doing something, knowing it wasn't right, but feeling powerless to stop? That desperate need to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel like you matter to someone. Anyone? Maybe you've made choices that you couldn't explain, even to yourself, because the pain of emptiness was just too much to bear, or you felt so numb that nothing seems to faze you, or you just don't care. I was 14 when that desperation led me down what could have been a dangerous path. Standing in front of my enraged father, trying to answer why I'd been spending time with a man much older than me, I had no words. In my teenage innocence, I was just searching for attention, for someone to make me feel special, to fill that bottomless void inside. I didn't understand then how vulnerable I was, how my deep need for love and validation had made me an easy target for someone whose intentions weren't pure. My father had discovered where I'd been, and thankfully nothing bad happened, but my father didn't know that. My dad asked me the words that changed my life. "Why do you continue doing this?" I couldn't answer him, not because I was being rebellious or difficult, but because I genuinely didn't know why. I didn't understand why I was reaching out for attention from someone who was not good for me. I didn't know that what I was doing was because I was not getting the love that I needed from my daddy, and I felt so incredibly lonely and empty inside, and that I had disconnected from myself and my emotions to survive the other things that had already happened in my life. And my silence, it enraged him. What followed was a beating that left much more than just physical bruises. It carved something deeper into my soul, a feeling that I was fundamentally wrong, broken, unlovable. That feeling has a name. It's called shame. For years, I carried that shame like a heavy shadow. It followed me everywhere, whispering that I was worthless, that I deserved the pain that he had caused, that something was inherently wrong with me, that I was bad, and that I was to blame for what my dad did to me, and that I was the problem as to why he couldn't love me. After all, when I went to my mom for comfort, she pushed me away and told me to just get to bed. No one took me to the hospital even though I should have been cared for. Even though my mother said the next morning that Dad was sorry we never talked about it again. This core wound, the denial of parental love that every child desperately needs, became the foundation of how I saw myself. When you're a child and your parent can't love you the way that you need, you don't conclude that there's something wrong with them. Instead, you believe there must be something deeply wrong with you. That self-blame becomes your truth, your story, your shame. I was completely powerless in that situation, and many others in my life. Maybe you feel so powerless and like me. Maybe your life feels out of control and you're not getting what you need or didn't get what you needed from your dad or your mom. Maybe you feel unlovable. For me, this escalated the self-hatred that I carried for much of my adult life and the horrible feeling of being bad. Maybe you reach for food like I did, or restrict food to try to feel powerful in those feelings of self-blame or shame caused by not getting the love that you desperately need and are seeking. Perhaps self-harm gives you a sense of physical pain, which feels easier to deal with than the emotional torture of shame, and to have relief from it for a little while. Maybe you question your gender identity because you have had to disconnect from your true self because you feel so wrong in your own skin. Eventually, people may turn to more powerful substances like alcohol or drugs, anything to quiet the voice of shame in our head. For me, my substance was dissociation. I had to disconnect from myself even more, creating another identity who could stand the powerful emotions of my shame. I had an identity that carried my anger, that I wasn't allowed to express. So what was one more? Maybe you're watching this right now, and something in my story resonates with you. Maybe you too have carried the weight of believing you were unlovable, that you were somehow to blame for the love you didn't receive. Maybe you've also found yourself reaching for ways to numb that pain, to feel anything but the shame of being unloved by someone who should have loved you unconditionally. Maybe you've asked yourself the same question my father asked me, why do I do what I'm doing? And maybe, like me at the age of 14, you don't have an answer. But here's what I've learned, and what I wish I could have told that scared 14-year-old that I was: we reach for these behaviors. The self-hatred, the eating disorders, the self-harm, the substances, the confusion about our own identity. Not because we're broken, but because we're trying to survive. We're trying to escape the unbearable weight of shame. Now I'm telling you, The love you didn't receive or aren't getting has nothing to do with your worthiness. The shame you carry isn't yours to bear. When you reach for destructive behaviors and get into gender confusion, or reach out to the wrong people for love, it's not because you're broken, but because you're trying to survive wounds that were inflicted before you had the words to express your pain, and before you started to believe that you were flawed and unlovable. Shame is the driver. It's the force behind so many of our destructive behaviors. When we feel worthless, powerless, and unlovable, we'll do anything to escape those feelings, anything to feel in control, anything to feel nothing at all. That night, when my father's rage met my silence, I couldn't explain why I was doing what I was doing because I didn't know. But now I understand. I was desperately trying to fill a void that his love needed to fill. Most destructive behaviors are a cry for help from a hurting person who really just needs love and acceptance. In trying to escape the feelings of shame, our unsuccessful attempts are a vicious cycle that leaves us feeling more empty, and the cycle of shame feeds on itself and is passed down from one generation to another. This cycle of shame is stopped when we decide to deal with our emotions and face the truth about our need for love and acceptance, and give yourself compassion and acceptance. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You're not alone. That shame you carry isn't your truth. That voice telling you that you're unlovable is lying to you. The love you didn't receive says nothing about your worth, and everything about the limitations of those who should have loved you better, but didn't know how, because they probably weren't shown love either the way that they needed. That confusion you feel, that pain you're trying to escape, that sense of being fundamentally flawed, it's not your truth. It's shame lying to you. Understanding this, understanding that shame is the driver, understanding that our behaviors are attempts to cope with the profound wound of parental love denied or the absence of a parent is the first step toward healing. It doesn't make the journey easy, but it makes it possible. It gives us a target, something to work with, something to heal. That gives us a chance to put shame back where it belongs, off of yourself, not in your hearts, but in the past where it was created. Your parents carried it too. We each have the choice to keep the feeling of shame going strong or stopping it with us, this generation. That 14-year-old who couldn't answer why, she's still part of me. But now she knows that she was never the problem. Now we know. And if you're still carrying around the weight of shame for the love you didn't receive, and you're searching for your why, I hope this helps you find your why. Jesus came to take our guilt for the sins we have done, but also he took our shame so we can put that burden down. It's not ours to carry. You are not your shame. You are not what happened to you. You are worthy of having understanding, of having healing, and of love, not because of anything you do or don't do, but because you exist. God created you and God loves you and you are wanted. And if no one has told you that today, I'm telling you now. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're struggling, please reach out for help. The resources are in the description below. You don't have to fight this alone.